Good morning and welcome to our Safety Committee, March 4th. It's nice to see you all. I thought we could start by introducing ourselves. Now that we're post or almost post-pandemic and not wearing masks, we can see how everyone's faces are looking. I'm Larry Frankel, co-chair of the Safety Committee.
Mike Pinto, co-chair of the Safety Committee.
Craig Steinbrink, counsel.
Charlie Baker.
Tom Robinson, Fire Chief.
Patrick Doherty.
Dave Biggert, village service director and building official.
Karen Schneider, Mayor.
Greg Minicello, Police Chief.
Great, thank you. Thank you. It's good to see you all. So we'll start with Greg, our chief from our police department. He has some items that he'd like to discuss and that we can begin with.
Thank you, Larry. Mainly, I don't have too much here. This is mainly, just for information, what's kind of taking place right now in the police department, and just maybe one item for discussion. Item number one, body camera and dashboard camera implementation. So we're moving in that direction. We start with the body cameras. We have received about $19,000 from the state to purchase body cameras. The body cameras themselves aren't really that much. It's the storage and the licensing that goes along with that. So they are on order. We are going to order a bank. We actually have 6 body cameras on order. It'll be one bank, so we'll share those. So we put in for this grant. We put in for about a $21,000 grant. We received about $19,000. It's a big push from Governor DeWine, and the money was distributed primarily to departments who did not have a body camera program. So this has been discussed for quite some time, and we're going to go ahead and move forward. Like I said, they are on order. They'll probably be here hopefully in another month. We received their state-of-the-art body cameras, and kind of to go along with that, these body cameras are going to be integrated with the onboard dash cameras in the car. So same system, and the dashboard cameras the funding for that is available through our safety fund that was created or generated last year. So everything's kind of been budgeted in. We're not going to have to, make any more purchases out of pocket for that. So we're in good shape there. So once again, those are on order. We ordered those through Sheeran Valley Dispatch, who has a contract with Motorola, and once again, purchasing power. There's many departments. Just to give you an example, like the city of Euclid, they're buying like 60 or 80 of them, whatever. So we're in that group, so we get a better rate. So several departments are purchasing these body cameras. But we were one of about 10 communities in Cuyahoga County who received the funding. So pretty excited about that. Our officers are certainly on board with it. They like the idea. Time's a little bit different out there right now. So and quite honestly, it's a necessary tool today for police officers. So any questions for me as far as body cameras or dash cams?
As far as storage, you said that how many months is?
Well, the storage is yearly. We have in that $19,000 that'll cover the first year of storage and licensing and everything. And then I don't have the exact numbers, but I want to say it might be like $2,000 or $3,000 a year, and it'll be stored. Actually, storage is going to be at Sheeran Valley Dispatch, so they will store that. And I don't want to say downside because it's not a downside, but with these body cameras, it will require more work. See, what happens is if there's a public records request or evidence, you have to go ahead and remove that. You don't give them the whole thing. There's certain things in there. So we have to have somebody go in there and redact in their software. So it's very time consuming when we get these public records requests. So it's definitely going to I don't want to say tie up it's another thing for likely our detective sergeant Mike Day to do. It's one of his responsibilities. So it will require, it's just another thing on his plate that we'll see for sure. So, but that's just kind of the way it goes.
One other question I have for Chief is, you mentioned the safety fund, that the dollars were coming from the safety fund. That was from donations, correct?
It was. And that was for the dash cameras. Yes.
So I think it's important to know that we've established the safety fund, and it has been well received by several residents who have anonymously donated a great deal to that fund, including the Tesla, which is always nice to see on the road.
Well, thank you for that. And just so everybody knows, the dash cameras, we'll have 5 of them, one for each car, brand new. The ones that we have right now, they're, the shelf life on what we have right now is about 12 years. We've gotten about 15 years out of them. So they need to be replaced, and that's what we're doing. It's about a $37,000 project for the new ones. That'll include, brand new state-of-the-art integration with the body cameras and also install.
Right.
So just a little bit of an update. Item number 2, this will be an update regarding our automated traffic cameras for 322. I think just about everybody here is familiar with, what we're doing here on 322. We discussed this, starting back in, I think, June of 21. And, we're moving forward with this project. Last week, there's been some things going on behind the scenes, not much right now, but the company Gatso, Census Gatso, was out on the 18th, I believe it was. I was actually in a conference, but Dave was nice enough to meet them. They did a site survey, and it was a preliminary site survey. My understanding, talking to Dave, there doesn't appear there's going to be any hiccups or anything like that. They'll be able to do what they need to do out there. And, so right now we're in a little bit of a holding pattern. They're going to do some aerial drawings for us. And there'll be, the process will take a while just because there's permitting that they have to do with the state and whatnot. So, we're still looking at probably the summer months before, we get this rolling. So, but we are moving forward. And in fact, next week I have a Zoom call with them next week to go over some of the, the administrative, items that we need to do. So we are looking at 2 of them. We are going to be installing one eastbound on 322. We don't know the exact location yet, but it'll be, coming down the East Hill for sure. And then same thing on the west side, but it'll be probably between County Line Road and River Road. So somewhere in the area of Foxhole Drive, that's when the speeds are the greatest, those 2 areas right there. So, but again, we don't know the exact locations just yet, but we will. But, my thought would be, probably within, 500 feet of, those locations that I just mentioned. So.
One other question about that, Chief. When we were talking about this at council, there was some questions from some of the people in the audience about a case that was coming up in February that was going to challenge the cameras. Do you know, like, the status of that?
Well, what you're referring to, in fact, our prosecutor actually testified
Right.
at the Ohio Supreme Court about 3 weeks ago here now. It wasn't necessarily it was more to do with not to eliminate the cameras. It was more or less they're trying to make it harder, or some people are trying to make it harder to run a program. As for instance, like the way it is right now, just for one example, might be, if you were going to, so say somebody received a citation in the mail and they wanted to challenge it. Okay, they have to do that at the muni court level. They have the right to do it just like anybody would. And so it's out of our hands. So I think it's a $50 filing fee right now. If they want to do that, that's set by the judge. So they're trying to say, well, maybe the community should pay for that filing fee instead of, so things like that. So, that was one of the items that was up, for debate during that hearing that they had. So they're supposed to come out with some decisions. They don't give an exact date, 3 to 4 to 5 months down the road, whenever the Supreme Court gets around to it, basically. So that's primarily what that was about, just, how to fund it and all that. Not necessarily, there are and have been several pieces of legislation, Senator Tom Patton, if anybody's heard of him, and he's actually a big police supporter, but, he's not in favor of the cameras, and he's been trying to, there's several pieces of legislation out there right now, but, I think we're still in pretty good shape with it though. So
Chief, did you say they'll be up in the summer? So they'll be up
hopefully, yeah, hopefully in the summer. Yeah. And there'll be a 30-day warning period, and we'll be very transparent. Everything's gonna be on the webpage. Everything. We'll have a section on there where they're at, drawings, calibration certificates, everything. So, we're very transparent. I'll probably throw it, place it in the pink sheet, where they are. We're not gonna, try to, hide these from anybody. We're going to be very the goal is here really to reduce the speed. I mean, so we're going to get that out there. This is where they are, proper signage. There's required signage needs to, be in place. We're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go above and beyond. So, the goal isn't, it's not a moneymaker for us. It's not what we're going for. We just want people to slow down, and that's really what it's all about. So, any other questions regarding the traffic cameras, Mr. Baker?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of noticing some increasing in speed on Mayfield. Is there any opportunity to put up those signs that we have that are lighted? It said the speed limit is XYZ and you're going XYZ. My hunch is that all the publicity that we're doing about the radar, the people are going to perhaps think that those are the ones that are going to get a ticket now. Perhaps, and that might even slow more people down. But in 40 years, I've never seen those on Mayfield.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a chance to maybe do a little bit of Mayfield with them?
Yeah, we started putting those back out in the spring, so we'll be getting those out. We have 2 of them. We usually, we'll respond to citizen complaints and get those on the side streets and whatnot. But, certainly we get them out there on 322 at times.
Okay.
Yeah, but you'll start seeing those. We'll get one out there for sure. Okay, third item right there is Sheeran River Road Business District. I think, it's always been a little, peeve of mine. You may have noticed, like, as you come across over here, just as you kind of come over the dip there a little bit, there's a lot of traffic, especially in the summertime with, kids walking to day camp and whatnot. So we're going to go ahead and try to increase the signage a little bit over here. The speed limit is 25, but as you come over that dip, that's when, I think everybody's kind of experienced that. If you're going to the post office, you're coming over the little incline there, and then it's like, wow, these cars sometimes are moving pretty quickly. So, we're probably going to put a couple fluorescent signs up on the 25. Signs going to put a bit, beneath it, just hopefully, catch somebody's attention. We can't replace the 25 sign with anything fluorescent because that's required by the state. What you see up there, you have to keep. So we may look to add a couple signs underneath it, just to, again, maybe there's a couple options I'm looking at. So, there's a lot of activity, like I said, especially, with pedestrians and in the summertime mainly, and we're going to try to do, whatever we can to, limit any accidents out there and try to reduce the speed at the same time. So,
Chief, did we get the new sign, the recommended signs? From
those, no, we're, in fact, that's a good point. That was about, we started talking about that.
We need to make a call to her because they were authorized.
Yeah, they were. And we followed up. And what the mayor's referring to is, this was last spring, actually. The state came out per our request, and they're going to go ahead. They were supposed to do it last year. And then, I think, supply chain issues and, the whole COVID thing, who knows exactly what happened. But on River Road, from Rogers Road all the way to Old Mill, they were going to go ahead and replace different signs for us, do some pavement markings for us. We have it all. And then just,
We need to get a hold of her.
Yeah.
Send pictures and everything of them.
So. Yes. So, we'll follow up for sure, but, it's on the radar. Okay, and the other thing, I just kind of mentioned in here, and this is just, a discussion on the possibility. I think I can tell you I'm not alone here when it comes to receiving complaints, not only here in Gates Mills, I talked to, my, other police chiefs, my colleagues around, and it's always the same. The primary thing is, speeding. And that's everywhere in every community. Nobody wants to see it. So, and I'm trying to tie this in a little bit to where we're at here right now. So, getting a little off track maybe. So we have, I'm going to try to tie this into our part-time staff. So as you know, we're a smaller agency. We have 4 part-time officers. 3 of them work full-time in other agencies. We very much rely on our part-time officers, very much. They're already working 40 hours a week, obviously, at their full-time job, so they're very limited in what they can work. If they're on day shift at an agency, certainly they can't come down here and work nights, things like that. So, there's not a lot of interest in law enforcement today. There's just not. And when there is interest in law enforcement, there's a lot of full-time opportunities now, a lot. Okay, so the part-time staffing is, a lot of communities are not even pursuing part-time because they're just not there. So right now we did hire a younger officer out of the police academy, and he has done a phenomenal job for us, phenomenal. But he's looking for full-time employment. Not right now, because we had a discussion about that. He was going to commit to us for 1 year. He's done a great job. But as with any young police officer, he or she would be looking for full-time opportunities. Obviously, it just makes sense. So it cost us about, and I'm just using this officer as an example, startup costs, training time, uniforms, vests, it's a little over $10,000 just to start up, just to train somebody. Then he or she would fill those hours for us that we need coverage for. And then, he or she's going to be leaving us. So in essence, we become a training ground. Okay. And then you start the whole process back over again. And, time is money and all that. And not only that, but you're looking for a good fit for your agency. Okay. Which he is. Okay. So I sit here and think to myself, with these traffic cameras coming in, the more work going on, the body cameras and all this, we may want to consider at some point to hang on to him, look to move him into a full-time position someday. We could use him as like a hybrid position. He's to date, he's working about 30 hours a week for us. Give you a perfect example. I mean, we had an officer who just returned from an injury. She was off for 2 months. She just returned. He worked every hour for her. Okay. Without him, that's full-time. That's overtime. I mean, because we just don't have people to fill it. We just, we don't have the part-time staff to cover that. So, I heard Treasurer Samborski mention at the last council meeting, the department has done a great job reducing the overtime and all that. Well, and I'm sitting back to thinking, this is a direct result of having this officer on our staff right now. Without him, I mean, it would go through the roof. So that's just my thinking. So if we were to do something like this, not now, but moving forward, potentially, if there wasn't hours for him to fill, then he can take over all of the traffic duties, spending time on all the side streets. So he would become, in essence, a traffic officer when he's not relying on the shifts to cover those shifts, to hit those side streets, to maybe review these civil infractions for us. So, it's kind of like a hybrid position. I figure if he's already working 30 hours a week, and he becomes potentially a full-time employee, now you put him up to 40 hours a week, it may be something we want to consider. So I'm not asking for that right now. It's just the lay of the land is completely different with, the hiring right now and part-time staff. It's just not like it used to be. It used to be, there were so many applicants for these jobs, and it's just not the case anymore. I was talking to Chief in Willoughby Hills just yesterday, and Willoughby Hills, they were famous. Dave, you could probably, Dave knows a little bit about Willoughby Hills. They have 21 full-timers, but they have 0 part-timers now. He says, because we just can't find them. Used to be, they had 7 or 8 of them, and they would just come in and work whenever and run traffic. And it's just completely different now. So I just kind of want to get that out there. It's just something that, might be, provide a better service to the resident too.
Question for you, Chief. You mentioned that we have 4 part-timers. Do we have 12 full-timers?
Yes.
And that includes the
School law, yes.
Our research.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just, I've said this before, just a little history. When, I started down here in 1992, I was the 12th full-time police officer in 1992. Okay, so today we still have 12, and we have an officer in the school. So, technically, you have like 11.25 officers when I started here either, though. So just to be clear on that. So, but we manage, it goes very well. I'm just trying to, think outside the box here a little bit because, you need to do that.
You're going to have a lot of redactions, I'm assuming.
Oh, there'll be a lot of redactions for
That'll
sure.
take a lot of time.
A lot of time,
Yeah.
a lot of time. Yeah. But, it's a trade-off. You need it. It protects the officer, protects the, the village. So, but yeah, that is going to happen. Absolutely.
Anyone else have any questions for the chief before we go on to fire?
Thank
All
you.
right, I got a couple of handouts.
Ooh, handouts.
My entire issue, if you will, for this meeting is the change in the fireworks law. This goes into effect January 1st. July 1st, excuse me. July 1st of this year. Traditionally, Ohio has had one of the strongest fireworks laws of all the states. And it has constantly been under attack from the industry that makes fireworks and, the producers, manufacturers, and the distributors to try and get more and more of these items out into the public. Basically, last year, they finally were able to get enough votes at the state level to make some significant changes in the fireworks law. And what they've done is they've kept what we've had since almost time began. You could buy sparklers and smoke things like that in the convenience stores. The bigger fireworks, the ones you shoot off into the air, you could purchase them, but when you did, you had to sign a sheet that said you will transport them out of the state of Ohio within 24 hours, and you will not discharge them in the state of Ohio. We all know that that's not the case. Generally, I've always gone to the fireworks displays put on by different communities through the years. And for whatever reason, probably COVID, last year I was home for the first time for 4th of July for the evening. And I could not believe the displays in my neighborhood. Where I live, the houses are separated generally by a driveway. And there's a house on either side of that driveway, and there were an unbelievable amount of fireworks being shot off in the driveways, between houses. The problem that you have with this is licensed distributors or exhibitors, excuse me. They have to go through training. They have to work with the parameters for how much distance you have between buildings and hazards and things like that to set off these fireworks. Residents and regular members of the public, they're just going to shoot them off. As they go off, they trail sparks, and a lot of times they fall on the roofs and roll down the gutters, land in the leaves in the gutters, and then start the houses on fire. I've lived through that a number of times through the years, not at my house personally. But once this happened, the one good thing that came from this law, if there was a good thing in the change, was it afforded all the communities that wanted to opt out and say, no, we don't think this is safe. We don't want to do that. I can tell you that I've met with all the fire chiefs in the Hillcrest area, the Heights area. I was in Columbus Monday through Wednesday with fire chiefs from around the state. And I didn't hear one area that wasn't going to try and opt out or wasn't going to do legislation to opt out. The sheets that I handed out, there's a description, from the state fire marshal. And the other sheet with the highlighted, that's something that I had put together that actually talks about the 1.4 G and the 1.3 G. And not only allowing residents or the public, the general public, to buy these devices and then shoot them off, then, the other issue is storage. We're fortunate here in Gates Mills that we don't have a lot of little shops and stores. The other communities are scrambling at this point with coming up with the legislation because they don't want all of these fireworks in these stores, creating another fire hazard, for the property and for the firefighters that are responding to these incidents. My concern in Gates Mills is that you could buy now all of these things. You don't have to take them out of state. You could fill your basement with them or your garage with them. If you wanted, you could turn around and sell them for profit on the internet. But the real issue is the storage. Even if we don't have a problem with someone shooting them off and the noise complaints that'll go along with that and the disruption of the peaceful nature of our community, we would now have these items stored in homes and other structures in the village. So one thing that is fortunate is our law director, Todd Hunt, is also the law director over in Richmond Heights, and they've already started the legislation. He's already been working on the legislation for opting out. If we fail to opt out, we can expect at least 20 days per year, every year, that people will be allowed to shoot these fireworks off. 20 days, and that's pretty much a minimum. So I'm concerned for the safety of our residents, our properties, and of course, our firefighters that will have to respond to this. If we have other injuries because of it, that will also add to the costs that the village will incur when it comes to EMS service. So there are a lot of different components to this. And I guess the most telling thing is how many communities are already working on prohibiting opting out, how many already have, but pretty much every fire chief that I know of is already working on getting this kind of legislation, put out there. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Tom, I'm wondering, as the safety committee, would it be helpful if we have a vote and then, support this so that you can bring that to council and say it's, discussed and supported that we do opt out?
Well, my intent was to bring this to the safety committee, hopefully get the nod, the approval, that yes, the endorsement, if you will, that the safety committee agrees that this is something that we should do for the safety of our residents.
I think then we should just have a vote, and right now is everyone who's in favor of opting out and who's not. So I'd say who's in favor of opting out? I would say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No, so you can use that in council.
Now Craig should bring it to council that we want a resolution. There's a lot of legislation out there, so it'd be easy for us to do, and we can have 3 readings doing it between now and July.
Mayfield Heights already has their ordinance in place. So
I think maybe
Quite a few do.
University Heights as well.
University, South Euclid, there's actually quite a few
Oh, there's lots.
that have, yeah.
Tom, do you know if you opt out, which I certainly am in support of, are there additional penalties that have to go into effect with that, or is it, would our ordinance cover that as is?
I haven't gone really far with this with Todd because I want to go to the safety committee, and one of the things, if we opt out and someone does discharge fireworks, I really feel strongly that there should be a penalty, a fairly hefty penalty for that. And that would be, I think, I would hope in the ordinance, so those funds would come back to the village. And to me, if an officer, let's say a police officer, has to respond because of noise complaints and it's because of fireworks, they haven't got the proper permits, I should have mentioned, opting out is opting out of the changes. The other things that are in the law about fireworks would still be in place. So things that are in place today. So anyone that would want to have a show would have to go through a permitting process, hire a licensed exhibitor. They have to have the setback, the distances. They have to get approval from the fire chief. All of that stuff stays in place. This
Including
is-
stores, chief? That prevent stores from opening up in Gates Mills by opting out?
Yes,
Okay.
but of course, and the stores and the changes in that are pretty substantial, which is what is really concerning to a lot of our neighbors that have retail.
Okay.
You know, they're allowing them to, I think, go from a 5,000 square foot to a 7,500 square foot. Well, so, and all that extra space is for fireworks,
Sure.
you know, in those stores.
Tom, is there any time concern besides July 1st? We have, how
Well,
long would it take to?
If,
enact
if it's brought to, mentioned in the council or committee reports that we're looking at this or the safety committee recommends, and then if we have it on the agenda for April, you've got April, May, June, so.
All right,
30 days, so it'll
three
be
readings,
July.
April, May,
Yep.
June.
And then chief, just enforcement wide, would that fall under, so assuming it goes through and someone does it anyways, is that the fire department that would then issue the, or would it be the police issue?
That would be the
Ticket?
police,
Okay.
because I'm sure it would be a combination of things. Actually, Greg would be
Probably. going
more
to
the
misdemeanor.
more correct person to answer, but we already have ordinances, noise ordinances in place.
Mm,
So if someone is shooting these things off, it's making a lot of noise.
Yeah.
If you, when you do get a chance to read through the handouts, it talks about the size of some of these things, mortar shells
Sure.
and rockets
Yeah.
that will be allowed under the changes. You know, so there's going to be noise complaints, so there would be an issue with that, along with the fact that we've opted out, so you're not allowed to do it.
Greg, I know you and I have had conversations back and forth regarding the noise ordinance. Are you comfortable that you have enough to do that if that were the
Well,
case?
that's kind of what I was asking. So, I mean, the way, typically what happens is, and we see it.
Greg,
every year
speak into
around-
the microphone so it gets recorded.
Every year around the 4th of July, it happens all over the place. We respond and, as long as it's nothing major, I mean, we'll just tell them, hey, knock it off or that type of thing. And we get voluntary compliance and that's it. If we have to go back, that's a little bit different. But if we don't have something like this, because we have some large properties down here, large properties, and you could see where, these 5 big, estates and whatnot, they do something. That would be my concern.
Right.
So, generally we haven't had, too many issues with it over the years, but if you don't opt out, then I could see where you could have bigger issues.
Yeah, and a part of the ordinance would be the enforcement
Right.
and fines for it. The noise ordinance, and again, Greg is more the correct person to answer this. I'm sure has some difficulties because noise, what's noise? How
Right,
loud
it's
is it?
subjective, for sure.
That's got to be very difficult to enforce. This would not be difficult to enforce. You're discharging fireworks and you're not permitted to do so.
Dave and I we've had some conversations about
Microphone.
noise, just noise. Like you were saying, we don't have a specific noise ordinance in terms of like hours or anything like that.
Right.
So again, food for thought, maybe somewhere down the road, because it happens all the time. It could be during the day, it could be in the afternoon. We've received calls about people having loud parties at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. If an officer responds and they hear it and somebody's complaining about it, that's technically a violation. Doesn't matter if it's 6 o'clock in the evening or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it makes no difference. If somebody calls and it's disturbing them, and an officer goes there and I kind of hear it, that is technically a violation where that person or whomever can be cited. So, we may look need to look at some maybe refinement of the noise ordinance someday. You'll get calls every year about them having, a wedding reception in my house, gonna have a live band till midnight, and again, those are, you kind of deal with those on a case by case basis, because I just simply say, well, kind of explain the noise ordinance to them and say, my suggestion would be invite your neighbors, let them know that you're gonna be having this, but inevitably you still get, people who call. And then, you go over there and you got to be the bad guy. So listen, music, you got to cut it down. We've had, 2 complaints here now. And then they get all upset over that, so we may have to, I'm not saying it's, a sense of urgency right now, but, we may want to shore up some hours in there someday.
So under current law, and perfect example is like we're up on County Line, our neighbors are in Chesterland, and I know where the family is. Every 4th of July, they light off fireworks at 11:30 at night. Dog goes crazy. So they go and do that today unless, somebody shows up and is going to cite them under, excuse me, Ohio law that, hey, basically this is illegal. You're not going to do this. And in that example, Gates Mills Village or Chestertown, somebody would cite them and said, hey, this is, illegal. Here's your fine to pay this. All we're doing here is basically maintaining that same environment by opting out effectively.
I think it gives us more teeth too. I mean, certainly, we're talking, the bigger displays and whatnot, so to me, those are,
Well, and I look at, hey, listen, it's 4th of July. I'm going to have a commercial company come in and set off fireworks in my house, say the professionals are doing it. I'm going to stand by with a beer in my hand and watch versus.
Better call the police chief, or the fire
Well,
chief.
yes.
Well, it's a permitting.
Well, there's a
process for
permitting
that.
process for all of that, right? So I look and say, well, hey, maybe should we consider, there's options in here, and maybe the only day you're allowed to do it's the 4th of July, and that's it. It's not 20 days, it's 1 day. And is that something that we should consider? Is that something, Chief, that you're, hey, under no circumstances, even 1 day of the year, just
I would be concerned.
from a discussion standpoint?
I would be concerned about the storage issue,
Okay.
because what you described a moment ago about, okay, you see a display from a neighbor, maybe another community. Right now, unless that other community, that neighbor got a permit, what you're seeing is an illegal display
Yes.
until July 1st. And that, if you don't opt out, that will then be, if they're using these fireworks that they've made the change, they're allowed to do it. So you're seeing illegal activity unless it was by a licensed professional, an exhibitor. And my concern again is first and foremost with safety. So allowing it 1 day, it's still not safe.
Still not, okay.
It's.
So Tom, currently, if someone has a wedding and they want to bring in some big display, do they contact you, or are they under current? Do we have any current code that requires them to come to you and say, I need a permit?
The current fire code, and even after July 1st, for the larger displays,
Mhm.
you have to hire a licensed exhibitor. They have to get a permit from the state of Ohio. They have to go through the local fire chief.
So it goes through the state back to
yeah.
you. They don't.
Yes, and then a lot of the work actually falls on the local fire department. So by law, if someone's going to have a fireworks display, a legal fireworks
Mhm.
display, legal, a state certified fire inspector must be on premises during.
That could be someone
during
from
the
our
setup.
department though, right?
Yep.
Okay.
One of our inspectors would have to be there during the setup to see that it's being set up properly.
Right.
During the display itself for a period of time after the display, and then at first light the next day, you have to walk the entire property
Mhm.
to look for shells that didn't explode.
Right. So are you satisfied with what we have now? If we opt out, the current code
Yeah,
is fine to handle what we do in Gates Mills now with the residents
Yes.
who do want to do their own display?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's very few that have done it. We did it a few years ago. Gilmore Academy did one. Went through the permitting process and had the proper distance.
Well, I know
It
there's
is very, it is time consuming, obviously, for the village officials.
some of my neighbors on the west side of the village. I don't know who they are, but there are some people who like to have big displays on.
And I-
4th of
and I
July.
think
Do
that-
they come to you or is this?
No,
still-
those are illegal displays.
It'd be nice to catch that, at least have them.
And having the opt-out in
permit, yeah.
place gives us the ability to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
And again, I believe there should be a significant penalty associated with the first offense. And let's say an officer goes and says, you're not allowed to do that. You have no permit to do that. That's illegal. You must stop. And they stop, and then a half an hour later, another phone call comes in. Well, double the fine.
Yeah.
You know, if you have to go back again, double the fine, you know.
Yeah, it's a first degree misdemeanor right now.
Yeah.
And it would be a mandatory court appearance. So, you know, it's a little bit of inconvenience. They just can't pay the
Very
citation.
inconvenient, yes.
Yeah, so they'll have to go to court and, you know, probably like $100 fine. So it would
Right,
be up to
court
the judge,
costs.
but right,
Mhm.
so.
And I
I was just gonna,
Yeah.
mention that, Craig, you're talking about the noise at 11:30 at night. What people don't realize when they're shooting those fireworks off, sometimes those land on people's roofs.
Oh, yeah.
And I recall years ago, I was visiting my brother in California. It was July 4th. Some cousins invited us over and my brother had some fireworks and shot them off. Middle of the night, the cousin's house, the roof was on fire. He never got invited back for 4th of July. So I think, people don't realize that. And we have, similar problems with people with open burning, where we've had sparks coming over to the house. And I think that people don't realize that what they're doing is jeopardizing other people's.
We had a young family, and I think Craig kind of mentioned this too. We had a young family a couple of years ago on Timber Ridge. Young kids were out and walking the dog, dogs off the leash, and then they start blowing fireworks off the neighbor, and the dog just took off. Was scared as you can, and it just you can imagine the stress for the kids and everything. And they're out there looking around for it for 2-3 hours. We're trying to help out, and so you get that too. I mean, the dog, the pets.
No, this, and I guess my point in all of this is something kind of caught my attention in this article with another, nearby city was, oh, we really didn't have any conversation. We just vote on it and it's done. And I think we at least owe it to, ourselves, the residents, that, yep, hey, we've talked about option A, B, C, D, and E, and we still agree with the fire chief's recommendation. We've looked at this. It wasn't just something that we just did based on a recommendation. We looked at some other options, and based on
Can I hold it maybe?
potential for fireworks catching on fire in somebody's roof, unexploded fireworks, other types of listen to catches, half the property, the wood's on fire, and then all of a sudden we got a big issue. It was considered and discussed. So
Makes
thanks.
sense. Another area that sometimes people don't think about are vets that are suffering from PTSD. And all of a sudden it's like a nice quiet evening and one of these shells are going off and it's like, it kind of takes them back to wartime. So a lot of issues with that.
Well, I do appreciate the support of the safety committee on this. And I did have one other thing outside of fireworks, if we're done with fireworks. And that was actually, Larry Frankel had mentioned to me about, trying to make sure members of the safety, which in case you don't know, you're not only on the safety committee, you're on the emergency management committee too. And I don't know if people explained that when they ask you to join, but you're on actually a dual role committee. But Larry had mentioned about, trying to make sure that members of the committee were updated on things that were going on from the department. And it kind of reminded me of something that I had been doing for many years. And then it fell off my radar and I quit doing it. And that is the monthly fire department report, which I give to council. I had posted that on the website, on the Gates Mills Village website. And I had been doing that for a long time and then just kind of forgot about doing it. So after a conversation with Larry, I started doing that again. So if you go to the village website and you click over onto, the tab for the fire department, you will see now the monthly reports of the activities of the fire department for every month. And then I also am posting the pink sheet article that I put out every month. So as far as, wanting to know what's going on with the fire department, the types of runs we're going on, the type of training that we're doing, it's up there every month now. So actually, thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
It was something I was doing and I just kind of forgot about it and went for quite a long time.
And perhaps Chief, you could do that as well for.
Yeah, I mean,
police
I
department.
can. I've never done that, but certainly, we can do that.
Yeah, I think if members of the committee think it's valuable, then it'd be good to have that posted. So. if you could
Well,
do
it
that.
also puts new information on the website, which is always a good thing,
Okay.
so it doesn't get too stagnant.
So Mike, anything else that you needed to add or any questions anyone has? Well, then if there is no further business, then we can adjourn the meeting and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Until I turn off all the equipment, all the microphones are still hot and we are live streaming. So give me a moment to shut everything off.
Thanks for that warning.
Yeah, well.